Okay. Hi, honey bunny. Video and audio check, please. Uh, Sorry, I'm a bit frazzled. I'd forgot that I had I forgot it was Monday, so I got here kind of late. Uh, okay. Turn that off. That'll probably help the audio there. Audio and video check, honey bunny. Uh, hello, hello. Mic seems to be working. Hi, David. Oh. Is the sound doing better now, Jeff? I forgot to move the microphone. Oh, yeah. I was working today, the construction job and everything, and it was 4:45 when I realized, oh, wait a minute, this is Monday. I had better get my butt back home. So it was a little bit late showing up. Well, I wasn't late. I didn't have my usual cushion of time. But anyhow. Oh, it's been kind of hectic. That project rarely get 8 hours per day in, but I get 40 hours a week. So I usually work half a Saturday too. The situation is a little bit chaotic. And so, as I say, it works out that most days I get, 6, 7 hours, some days 8. And then on Saturday, I just make up the difference, whatever it is. Yes, I understand, honey bunny. It takes quite a while to make the return. Anyhow, we're waiting for more people to show up. Come on. This is the largest piece of that scale that I found so far. And I can't tell whether it's oxidizing steel pipe, whether it's other stuff that's precipitating on the steel pipe, or something that's combining with the steel pipe and turning it into something. My plan is to take it and actually do a fire assay on it, basically, and make sure there's nothing of any value there. But that's what it looks like. And it's interesting. I presume it's just kind of a coating that builds up inside thing. The one thing that's interesting about it is that for whatever reason, I can think of a couple, the amount of this stuff coming out was dramatically larger initially than in the later runs. Now, to me, it could very easily be this builds up in the pipe, then you turn it off, the pipe cools down, then you heat it up, the pipe gets hot, you start running it again, stuff flakes off and falls out the bottom, where the other theory would be that it gets formed during the earlier stages of the process, where there's a lot more sulfur dioxide gas and other stuff. No, it is not galvanizing. It was black iron pipes. There was no zinc on it to start with. Um, so I say I'm not sure. I'm guessing, as say, it's just kind of stuff combining with the inner bore of the iron pipe, and that was actually designed for. I assumed that the chemical environment inside the ignition pipe would be pretty darn harsh, which is why it's so easy to replace it. I say, just go down to the hardware store, buy another 2-foot black iron nipple, and done. So I say that's what is there. The output of the furnace, after several runs, the amount of sparkage dropped dramatically, but it stayed fairly constant for quite a few iterations, half a dozen or so. And then it dropped off dramatically. And not sure what's going on. My guess is those are particles which are thicker, more resistant to combustion, things like that, and it just takes longer. But they're, in terms of number, they are a small amount of the total, as in less than 10% of the total seems to last long, but it keeps putting out sparks for quite a few iterations. Now that would also theoretically be consistent with like this coating breaking down or something, but I never saw any big pieces. Okay. So I'm not sure. Examining the product microscopically was not terribly informative. It clearly looks more oxidized, in further runs. But I'm not knowledgeable enough to be able to take a look at it and give opinions. So I'm not sure. I'll play some more games. And goodness gracious, me oh my. So that's the dealio there. I was quite surprised with how little gold came out of that fire assay of those combined concentrates. Looking at the concentrates in the pan, I think some gold went somewhere. Don't know where. If it roasted out, that there was enough other stuff there that the heat during roasting caused it to volatilize, whether the particles didn't really settle through the slag during the smelting process, or what. Simply not sure. I'm going to take and resmelt some of that slag and see what happens. But I'm not comfortable with that result. It does not look right to me. I would have expected a couple of tenths maximum in there. I mean, if it had been higher than that, I would have been less surprised than what I saw. So it seems to me that something probably went awry. That's my guess. And volatilization is a definite possibility. If so, that's going to be an important criterion to get to the people down in Nicaragua because if it's that easy to volatilize, then we may need to try and change procedures or not. Don't know. Aside from that, I did okay. A little bit tired. Of course, being 70 years old, that's not entirely unreasonable. Eva's doing great. She's really spunky. Yesterday at the motel, some people didn't show up and everything. So you had what, 21, 22 rooms to do?
21 rooms.
21 rooms with one other person. And oh yeah, gold can definitely become vapor. It's not so much metallic gold uncomplicated with other factors, but things like gold chloride are known to be significantly to substantially able to volatilize. They had a test by the Bureau of Mines where they took an artificial ore. They took basically silica sand and doped it with gold chloride. Okay. So the only thing there was silica and gold chloride. And at reasonably modest temperatures, I forget now, but it's in the neighborhood of 400 degrees Fahrenheit. They lost like 5 to 10% of the gold. And here's the kicker: in the presence of iron pyrite, the losses exceeded 90%, went poof. Okay. So it would not be shocking to me if that isn't what happened in one way or another. Now, the way you deal with that is by putting a scrubber on the system. And just a wet water scrubber is usually adequate, although it's usually over a medium, like burlap, layers of burlap that are soaked in water as opposed to spraying water in an empty space. As a matter of fact, the ability of various chlorides to volatilize is so substantial that in the early part of the 1900s, some guys did some serious research in terms of fractional distillation of ore, where they would basically deliberately roast it with salt to turn it into chlorides, and then heat it and scrub the exhaust and get high recoveries, like 90% recovery of the metal values. So yes, they can definitely volatilize. Okay. As I say, if that is the problem you're having, then you need to set up a scrubber. Either that or go to a wet chemistry. If you were using a leaching system or whatever, volatilization isn't important. But yeah, that's a potentially major problem. So it is not something to be ignored. Definitely. It is something to be kept in mind and watched for. And this is exactly the kind of circumstance where you go, aha, that looks funny. Okay. No, that is not correct, David. This was gold chloride in the presence of iron pyrite. Okay. There's other chemistries that can be involved. This is why, for someone like us, the usual thing is to simply fire assay the concentrates and then roast it and then fire assay the roasted concentrates, which we have done with this stuff, and it didn't seem to be, volatilization did not seem to be a significant problem. There were small losses, but they were actually within the bounds of experimental error, kind of, extreme bounds of experimental error, but still, 10% plus or minus with the equipment I'm using and such. That's not shocking, nor is it a deal breaker. Hey, Brian. You're high, huh? Wow. So let's say if you take 10% losses total in getting your gold, that's not a deal breaker. Tricky, how's it going? Long time no hear. Everything's going fine here, Tricky. I'm back on my feet again. I had some health issues last year. Heart attack in the spring, life-threatening nosebleed in the fall. And Eva's cancer came back. She got treated, got through the treatment okay. Looks good, but she's doing physiologically just fine. Little one, come over here if you can and just wave to Tricky. So it was kind of a rough year last year.
Hi, everybody.
She's a little embarrassed because some of the radiation burns, but it's healed up well. She's got good energy, and she's in good spirits and stuff. So about as good as it can get under the circumstances. So at the moment, she's doing just fine, Tricky. Hey, we're trying. Doesn't matter how many times you get shot at, as long as you're good at ducking, huh? I've had the life-threatening nosebleed was pretty weird. I don't know if you've been watching the videos and stuff, but I did one on that. But the things I thought I would get my first life flight for, that was not on the list. That was not on the list. And it's a good thing it happened when it did, because had it happened about a month earlier at the wrong time, I would have never survived. That's why I was doing all that roasting, Brian, was to make sure I got thoroughly roasted stuff so I can do some leach testing on it. But I wanted to make sure it was thoroughly roasted and see what happened. If the guys will ever get back to me, let me see if I got any, if they ever replied to my email. No, don't see anything. But anyhow, that's what we're going to check. And then also use it to test the thiosulfate leaching and stuff. I believe there was a weight loss. I'd have to look in the lab notes. It was relatively modest. Again, it was like less than a 10% change in stuff, because when you replace sulfur with oxygen, the weight doesn't change a whole lot. But it was relatively modest, not huge. And I can look it up if it becomes important, Brian. But I say it wasn't a huge change in the overall weight. The presumption is, because they're doing fairly well with a regrind and retable of the sulfides right now, and hopefully we'll be able to do an even better with a regrind and retable of the roasted sulfides. Percent sulfur in the ore. Might be able to give you that one. Okay, not on that. I would imagine it would be I know what the papers look like. They're going to look different than anything else in here. Yeah, it was. Oh, come on. Could you please stop grabbing my shirt, you piece of crap? I thought I'd put them up near the top of this stuff so it'd be easy to find. Could we please just work? A crap load of stuff from Alpine. This is stuff from ALS where they did all those elements, and I'm pretty sure sulfur is one of them. Huh. Okay, be that way. Let's try another clipboard here real quick. These are the various instructions and reports. Come on. That's awfully big report. No. And it's not readily available. Don't know where it is. I definitely have a copy of it somewhere, but I can't tell you. Oh yeah, I love fry bread. Yes, Red Wing, I am. I've been so busy and tired that I've been missing quite a few videos lately. But yeah, I have been pretty tired. I know they never tell you anything, huh? Yeah. Yeah, Navajo tacos are real popular down there at Tucson special events. The Tohono O'odham tribe down there, they have Well, typically they'll have a couple of stands out in front of the Son of Your Mission, and then they'll also have people show up for various events and this and that and the other. Pretty common down there. But yeah, it's I try and comment on enough stuff, but oh goodness gracious, I am just so tuckered lately. Oh, trying to do too many things at once, and mentally I'm just worn out. So, oh well, that's life. Hopefully this summer we'll be able to just focus on one thing. Last night, well, yesterday, Eva was working, so I decided to do something that's best done when she's not in the house. And let me show you what they look like. Let's see if anyone can figure out what these things are. Okay, everybody. Can anyone take a guess as to what these are? Oh, because I say it's just one of those things that best not with Eva in the house, because the outgassing is pretty significant. Vittles for some people, not for ordinary people. Does everyone give up, or anyone want to make any more guesses here? No, they certainly are not fudge bars, Rob Butcher. That is certain. Ooh, that's closer, Michael. But wrong kind of devil's lettuce. No. What these are, I call them fire cubes as opposed to ice cubes. That's because these are about half habanero and half serrano pepper that's been ground up. And we'll be using this to make various salsas and hot sausages and things like that for Lauren. He's going to be up on a mountain again this summer, and this way he'll have stuff he can snack on. But it's just crazy. Each one of those cubes is essentially one habanero equivalent unit. Lauren likes equivalent of 2 of those in a pint of salsa. And that's just crazy. Looks like okra and cheese. Colors are good. Right. The cheese is actually habaneros. So, yeah, he really likes hot stuff. And being up on a mountain now, like Rock can tell you, when you're out in the field doing support work and stuff, sometimes it's hard to get food and stuff like that. And so part of the thing is to make stuff that's easy for Lauren to just slap together and eat, that he likes. The salsa works well. Another thing that works well would be to take 2 of those cubes and enough sauerkraut to go into a 1-pint jar, mix them up, stuff. That has to be refrigerated, though. we don't have don't have a method of preserving those. So anyhow, the hot sausages, those can be pressure cooked and preserved, so you can use those for a lunch out in the field. And the salsa goes on anything, and the hot sauerkraut kind of goes on anything. And so, as I say, that was it. The aroma is enough that it's tough on Eva. When I'm making it in the kitchen, she's in the living room. So since she was working, I thought, oh, that would be a perfect time to whip it out. So yeah, that's what I did yesterday. And between the job and just everything else, boy, don't have the energy I used to. So how's the family doing, Tricky? Everything going well, and kids getting bigger and everything? I heard you guys had, was it an earthquake or a typhoon or both in the last month or so? No, he actually really likes that spicy stuff. I made stuff before, and one habanero equivalent unit per pint was kind of mild for him. So I say it actually works well for him, and it makes it so that lunches are palatable and stuff, because he works so hard. You know, a 12-hour shift is nothing unusual during the summer up there. He's going to be riding herd on multiple core drills this summer. Last summer he had trouble just keeping up with one. This summer he's going to be doing multiple core drills. So it's just one of those things that make it something that's easy for him to snack on. That would be, ridiculous for me. I would, I'll tell you where the terrorists are. Absolutely. I'll confess, whatever. Just don't make me eat anymore. Running 5 just now. Yep. I say that I suppose it's possible if you got enough helpers that know what they're doing, so that you're not having to fix drills yourself and repair and maintain and this and that and the other. But that was not the situation last summer. He's going to have to get it. They're going to have to get a lot better coordinated. Well, how far do you have to drive home every night, Rock? It would seem to me that you'd have to be pretty close to the scene to do that. Hi, Gene. About 10 miles. Yeah, that's not too bad. Yeah, Lauren is, well, up on the mountain. He's about 35, 40 miles from town, about 60 miles from his house, substantially over an hour. And last year they were constantly, like calling him at 10 o'clock at night or midnight, this broke, that broke, whatever, That's great. Now, in his case, he moved a trailer up there, and so travel time from the drills to his trailer was less than 5 minutes. You know, that wasn't bad. I mean, he could have walked there in 10, you know, so that wasn't too bad, but he does it by moving a trailer out there. No, Rock, they are not his personal drills. What happened was, by the time the permits showed up, all the core drills that were out there had been kind of contracted for the summer. So they had to find a company that would kind of like drag one of their drills out of retirement and slap together a crew of misfits and oddballs and send them out. So it was a less than ideal situation. That because he's basically the guy keeping the whole thing going. He's kind of the on-site company representative, but not the engineer. I mean, his job is to kind of do whatever needs to be done. Build roads, got it. Make portals, got it. Repair stuff, got it. You know, make improvements on the boss's house, got it. That sort of thing. And so he's kind of the utility man, and he believes that in the long run it'll work into a pretty good position. Not the contractor, the mining company. The mining company themselves. I mean, he works, his direct supervisor that he deals with a lot of time is the president of the company. That's his kind of chain of command in many ways sometimes. So that puts him in a little bit unusual position, kind of off to the side, and sometimes down low, sometimes up high. But he believes that it'll work out favorably in the long run. Yes, Rock. It is kind of an unusual situation, but then this is Montana. There's a lot of unusual situations here. Yeah, I hope so too. He's, I say, it's an unusual, kind of an independent contractor in parallel sort of thing. Sometimes it works out real well, but it always works out to be a lot of hours. He's been working all winter over in Butte, getting things up and running for when they bring in the real contractors this year. Flexible management status. There you go, honey bunny. Let's say he's kind of that guy. It's awful hard to get by without somebody that does that, which is like, who the hell do we get to do this? Lauren, you can do that. There's also a mine I just saw on the news. There's a mine called the Broadway mine, which about 60 miles that way. It's like roughly 30 miles east of Townsend. Historic mine. They've got cores. They got massive sulfides that are running up to 3 ounces per ton gold and stuff. It was on a news program, a local news program. And as such, it's clearly promotion, where the company decided we need to go out there and start, getting some visibility here. So I don't know much more about it than that, but it's first I've heard about them reopening that mine. but they were talking hundreds of thousands of ounces of gold and millions, hundreds of millions of pounds of copper. Exactly, Rock. You can imagine. Now, I presume that the drill crews that you're supervising, do they work for an independent drilling contractor, or are they employees of the mining company itself? It can make a difference. I know that this mining company wants to, in the fairly short-term future, buy its own drills and get its own crews. But I can see how both can be useful under certain circumstances. But say last year was, they wanted to get some holes in the ground, and there was no more drills available by the time the damn Forest Service got around to giving them a permit. And I'm sure that you've had situations like that, Rock, where you're fighting all year to get a permit, and then about October they hand you a permit and you go, what am I supposed to do this before the snow hits? Interesting, Rock. Now, what would be the advantage of setting up your own drilling company? I mean, one that you own, if you were, say, the president of a mining company, and setting up your own independent drilling company that you can rent drills from yourself or have them do other stuff at other times. What would you think of a deal like that? Does that seem to make sense or not? You plan further out than that? When possible, yeah. Okay. That wouldn't surprise me, Rock. The problem that they're running into here is that as they get data, then they want to do the next step, and they're constantly waiting on permits to do the next step. And with a seasonal situation, which you deal with that a lot too, although I don't know if you're dealing with positions where they literally will not allow you to go out there for half the year. I mean, the Forest Service shuts it down. And so they're sitting there going, well, if we can get anything done this year, it puts us 12 months ahead of where we would be otherwise. And that's kind of where they were at. It was a new project. They had some good indications, and they wanted to get some holes in it and put in for permits, theoretically in plenty of time. And then the Forest Service drags its feet. By the time you get a permit approval, it's pretty late in the process. Is that the kind of stuff that you have to deal with over there? Or you got so many things that it's not a big problem? I don't know if that's even possible, Rock. Because they just, gosh, they come up with some ridiculous permitting issues. Like, okay, as soon as you've drilled those holes, destroy the road. Well, what if we want to drill another hole up there someday? You'll have to rebuild the road. Jeez. It would seem like we'll destroy the roads when we leave. Would make sense to me. but that's not the way the Forest Service around here has been working. It's no, as soon as it's no longer in use, you have to get rid of it. And I say it's really, really annoying. Now, I heard years ago, Rock, that up in Canada, basically all the permitting for mining stuff went through one central nexus. The environmental stuff, the water quality, the land use in terms of things like forestry. You got to go through one point of contact. Yeah, they are nuts. Agreed, Rock. Absolutely. You know, there is no reason to destroy a road, especially, yeah. See, that also helps when you got a single point of contact where basically everything goes through. That makes it a lot more efficient in many ways. I know at the Cypress Sierrita mine down there by Tucson, which was a major copper mine, it was a world-class copper mine, not a record size or anything, but it was a good size copper mine. One of the engineers decided that he wanted to get an idea how many actual regulatory agencies they had to deal with. And I believe it came out to be 178 separate agencies. And many times they have contradictory regulations. You know, you can't comply with this one without breaking that one. So it creates just a ludicrous situation for a business to try and operate in. Yeah, I would think so too, Michael. Yes, if somebody went to the trouble of building a road up there through the forest, that might come in handy from time to time. Yeah, we got BLM Forestry, we got the Montana State DEQ, we got the United States Environmental Protection Agency, all that stuff. It just gets ridiculous. And again, in many cases, you have conflicting regulations where you literally cannot legally do it. Because no matter what you do, somebody is going to say, no, that isn't cool. Hey, George, how's it going? Been a long time. Let's see if you guys can say hi more often. Oh, yeah, it's been a real mild winter here. Be cold for you guys, but I think it only got below 0 Fahrenheit maybe 7 days this year. Ridiculous. Exactly, Rock. And then the other thing that the big companies wind up having a problem with, there's one called Rosemont over there by Tucson there. Are you the mine of that name in El Dorado County? We have no mine in El Dorado County that I'm aware of. But anyhow, and Rosemont got the whole thing. They got final permits to operate. And then Center for Biological Diversity sues them. And they go and beat the lawsuit. So then they sue them again. You know, and by the way, guess who pays the lawyers for the Center of Biological Diversity? The United States government is paying the lawyers of your opposition. Genius. So, I say it just gets insanely difficult at times. I don't know if the Rosemont operation has ever really started mining at all, and it's been well over a decade since they got their final permits. And it's ridiculous. There was the Indian Pass mine in Southern California. They got their final permits to operate and everything. Then there was an election. County Board of Supervisors changed, and they decided to basically abrogate the permissions. They said, no, we're not going to let you run. They said, well, you've already told us we can run. No, we're not going to let you. There was a lawsuit involved there where the mine was basically saying, well, if you pay us for all of our profits up front, we'll quit. Well, it should not only be auto tossed, but it should be costly. They should have to pay the costs of the mining company or whatever. You're going to have lawyers that are going to have to respond, et cetera, et cetera. All that should be billed at maximum rate, handed right to those people. And vexatious lawsuits. Yep. That's a good way of putting it. The United States has got a lot of problems here. Apparently, we got a real fraud problem, too, on top of everything else. Oh, well. Well, we're working on it. What do you think is going to happen in Alberta, I think it is, that's looking at maybe seceding? Do you think that that's going to go through, Rock? I don't think it's Saskatchewan. I thought it was Alberta, but I'm not sure. And it seems like there's a significant motivation. Not a chance? Okay. Legally, they could theoretically do so, though, correct? Because of what Quebec got Okay, Rock. Interesting. Okay. Well, let's say if the natives wanted to secede, is it legally possible? Okay. There's possibilities there. I'm not sure what's going to happen in states like California and New York too. New York City seems to have done an excellent job of chasing the rich people away. And I don't know why they don't study their economics. I mean, it's really economics 101. Oh, by the way, Rock, I don't know if you saw the thing on the Gold Dragon, but this is some of that stuff. It's a lining that builds up inside the ignition tube. Not sure what it is yet. I'll do some testing and figure it out. Well, I really can't, Rock, because I don't know how they're treated in Canada. I know kind of how they've been treated in the United States, but I can't compare without information on the other side of that equation. But if they own the land and they don't want to do so, that would be adequate, So, interesting situation we're in. Jeff, that may be correct, but if Rock is correct, it doesn't matter because they don't own the land. It's the natives that own the land, and therefore they're the ones that get to decide. Makes sense. You know, that's okay. Thank you, Rock. I appreciate it because trying to get information is pretty tough. For example, I called my brother today to ask what the situation was going on in Brawley, California, which he lives about 50 miles from Brawley, California. And so I thought, excuse me, what's the story here? I'm getting some interesting stuff on the internet. Well, what's going on, Randy? And he goes, what do you mean, Brawley? What do you mean? And so I told him, does anyone have any idea what's happening in Brawley right now? Because it seems significant. How important it is less clear. I agree the media is full of false news, but what's happening in Brawley is not in the news. That's the point. No, they had about 400 tremors in the last 2 days within a few miles of Brawley. I mean, it's really tight, and it's a lot of tremor. There's something like 4 over magnitude 4. Also, the largest magnitude was 4.7. So it's not just a bunch of real small ones. There's actually some significant ones too. And for those of you who are not aware, Brawley is basically at the southern end of the San Andreas. It's in the transition zone between the San Andreas and the Imperial Fault, which is kind of an extension. And that's the area where it goes from a strike slip along Southern California to a spreading center in the Sea of Cortez. And so considering how this is like, again, 50 miles from my brother's house, I thought perhaps they might be making a big deal of it. Found a little bit more there, but apparently not. So it's strange because I would have thought something of that activity, of that intensity, would have at least made the news and people would be talking about what might be going on. And that's just, well, let's see something here. Let me try something. I'm going to see if I can make this happen. Shouldn't be too hard. We did it last time. Aurora. Come on, USGS. Might be somewhere just to search for it. Okay. USGS earthquake map. There we go. Latest earthquakes. Let's see. These are only 2.5 or higher for when? Map, yes, I know. Settings, 1 day magnitude 2.5 plus, no. 7 days magnitude, oh, 7 days, all magnitude US. Okay, there we go. That's the map of what's happening around Brawley, California right now. Okay. And let's see what we're looking at here. That one's magnitude 1.3. Close. I would have thought a red, magnitude 1.5. What are these? Magnitude 2.5. So the orange ones are magnitude 2.5. The red ones are only 1.5. What's the yellow? 1.4. Magnitude 2. Huh. Hard to tell. Anyhow, but that's quite an interesting map. I say if that was 50 miles from your house, you might say, interesting. Let's see. It could be rock. If you take a look here, this is the San Andreas Fault. This is the Imperial Fault. And this is that transition zone. As you can see, there's a lot of stuff over here too. So it's, again, it's an interesting situation in terms of how to interpret it. I don't know. They've had earthquake swarms there before, but I don't think any of this frequency, the number of earthquakes. Biggest earthquake there in the last several years was a magnitude 7.4. So it's kind of hard to tell, but that's why I asked my brother, what are you hearing about it? And he said nothing. Haven't even heard it as happening. Strange. Oh, absolutely, Rock. I say that particular area is where the San Andreas, which is running strike slip, transitions to the northern end of the Sea of Cortez, which is a spreading, it's basically a rift valley. So it's I'm certainly not qualified to analyze it, but it's the sort of thing that'll get my attention. So I say it's an interesting thing, but I mean, it had a lot of earthquakes off of Santorini and nothing really happened as of yet. And lots of interesting geology going on the planet at the moment. Okay, I understand the difference, Rock. It's kind of like the Alaskans. You know, they get paid for the oil. Yeah. Did you have geothermal also? That again, that's kind of the spreading center issue. Um, they've also got a lot of lithium in those geothermal solutions there, and I believe there's significant lithium in the Salton Sea also. So there's lots of interesting stuff in that area. But exactly what it is, hard to tell. Also, the interesting thing is that's below sea level. I think it's fairly close to vertical, but I do not know, Jeff. I am not sure. But that area there that you see is basically below sea level. There's a rise of land around the U.S.-Mexico border that goes up to about 40 feet above sea level and then drops off again. And as far as I know, it's mostly just sand. Yeah, Gene, they're looking at figuring out a way of extracting the lithium from the same geothermal solutions that are currently being brought to the surface to run geothermal power plants and then pumped back down again. And I think they said something to the effect of roughly the geothermal plants near El Centro there could supply like 20% of the world's lithium needs. What, little one?
We may want to pick up an extra large thing of oil or extra oil because it appears that there's going to be a shortage on things like Rotel.
Oh, well, we've already got 5 gallons sitting in the truck.
What about for our other vehicles?
It'll work in it.
Okay.
But we could buy some of the van should actually go with a 5W20. By the way, Eva says
mayor in California just pled guilty to acting as an illegal Chinese agent.
Yeah. She said there may be a shortage of motor oil coming up here shortly. So take that into account.
Yeah, Costco and Walmart just found out that they're not going to be getting shipments here soon.
Costco and Walmart saying their suppliers are saying, no, not this month. And then on top of that, California's got the issue. They're shutting down a couple refineries. That's not going to help out any. I don't know what it's going to do here. I know we have some refineries here in Montana. We have oil production in Montana and we have refineries in Montana, but I do not know if it's hard to tell, Rock. It could be refining capacity or something like that. Let's see. Does Montana refine enough petroleum for its own needs? Let's see. Yes. Montana refines enough petroleum to cover its own needs and actually produces a surplus. The 4 refiners, 3 in Billings, 1 in Great Falls, have a combined capacity of 200,000 barrels per day, processing crude from Montana, Wyoming, and Canada. Canada! You send us petroleum. Thank you, Rock. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm not sure right now. That whole situation is pretty confused and fluid at the moment, Rock. And until that steadies down again to something approaching predictable routine, it'll be kind of hard to figure out, who's on first, so to speak. Oh, I don't think you're bad guys, Rock. You sent it to us at a discount. Is there a particular reason why it's discounted? Because the transportation is real cheap or something? I mean, I heard some of you guys were going to build a pipeline to like British Columbia so you could sell it to Asia, which seems like a pretty smart business move potentially. I would think they'd pay a good quality price. Are those oil sands oil? What quality is that? Is that a reasonable average quality oil, or exceptionally good, or poor, or what? Oh, okay. So it's not ideal. It's kind of like the Venezuelan oil is not the best oil or the easiest oil. I wouldn't say best, easiest oil to refine. Yeah. Okay. So, as I understand it, the refineries have to be significantly different in construction to handle it well. It's not like you can just adjust it. You actually have to build it somewhat differently to handle it well. So there may be a limited market in some way. I don't know. So it's certainly amazing to see how much Earth. What did they do with um, the spent tar sands, the equivalent of the tailings? Uh, Rock is there an easy way to reclaim it, or is that stuff just nasty forever and ever? Because it would seem to me there would be a high probability that the spent tar sands would be kind of a difficult material to deal with. Well, I would suggest the Chinese are probably a good market. Um, I mean, certainly the Canadians should be looking to what's good for Canadians. You know, if they're willing to pay a better price, go for it. You know. Interesting. I wonder how the plant life handles that. I mean, I'm sure you could top coat it with, soil and get reasonable plant growth, but I'm wondering if there's a way to adjust it to where it's healthy to grow plants in volume, forests and that sort of stuff. Um, because as long as it's fairly, call it environmentally neutral, it might be relatively easy to reclaim. Certainly, they've got to be producing an enormous quantity of it, um, with how much they're moving to recover the oil. So, if it was closer to a metropolitan area, you could use it to build an artificial mountain to go skiing on. Well, I can understand that, Rock, but think of how much longer you'll live. I mean, it would seem to me, Rock, in your experience, how long do the field geologists last if nothing, get like my dad smoked 2 packs of cigarettes a day, and I got him at age 48. My friend High Woods, he lived to like 92 or something. He didn't do anything extraordinary, but he was in very good shape when he was younger, doing field geology and stuff like that. So it would seem to me that the field geologists are going to have an advantage in longevity compared to your, you know, button pushers and stuff. Interesting, Jeff. Never heard of that one. Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me, Rock. For somebody who's a field geologist, it would seem that, they just keep getting exercise. And now with the ability to replace hips and knees, it would seem to me those would be the parts that would wear out most on a field geologist. Aside from that, I mean, they're not getting exposed to a lot of environmental toxins, dust, fumes, anything like that. And they get good exercise. Hey, the way things are going medically, that might not be a bad plan, Rock. It's certainly a target. But I say that seems to me that in the older days, hips and knees would wear out. But nowadays, they can just replace those rascals. So it would seem to me that you should be able to, you know, yeah, that's my thought. You see, and I don't know about the ankles, but the knees can be replaced, and apparently fairly effectively now. Yeah. So I say to me, it's not a bad gig. I love being out in nature too. I'd much rather be out in nature than be in an office. Absolutely. So I say I think it's a great gig. Um, Rock, how much of the actual analysis of results in terms of things like three-dimensional mapping and stuff like that do you do? Anything? Or are you basically just getting the samples, observing the formations and stuff, and then the results go to the engineering types or whatever to actually punch them into the programs and things like that? How does that all work out? Because, the field geologist has got to be someone who's guiding the drill crews, selecting the samples, deciding where it looks like stuff is going, where it would be appropriate to drill and appropriate to sample and stuff like that. But it seems to me it's probably the engineering types that actually use the programs and the models and stuff like that. Am I correct? Okay. So you do that also in some situations, huh? Yep. Yeah, well, and that's what your expertise is better than anyone else for. To actually take a look at the ground truth and see where that leads you. I can't imagine that anyone in an office looking at a computer could possibly get the kind of understanding that a field geologist who also looks at computers would. How often does your particular observations and expertise clash with just a straight abstract analysis of data? Hey, Mr. Virtue, is that something that happens all the time, big time, or occasionally, or is it improves things but doesn't really make huge directional changes too much? How does that work out in the real world? Because I'm sure there are guys who think sitting in front of a computer is the best way to spend their time, and they can definitely get more understanding because they're sitting there looking at all the data. Okay, Rock. Okay. I can understand. Everything's always more complicated than you wish. That would be good. I got to try and figure out how to do that. Little one,
What?
how hard would it be to set up the live streamy thingy so that we could have Rock Butcher on as like a live guest?
I do not know how to do that at all, dude.
Eva says she doesn't know how to do that.
I mean, I have no clue whatsoever how to do that.
Does anyone have any idea how difficult that would be?
I know how to set up things like a Teams meeting or something, but I don't know how to get it on your live stream.
We've got UBS, right?
We have OBS.
OBS.
We haven't been using it lately.
Okay. I know we haven't been. I don't know. We've, of course, got YouTube's technology available. We also have something called OBS. Does anyone know how hard it would be to set up something like that with Rock? I would think so, Rock. It would seem to me that the person who's actually looking at it in real life and is also familiar with what the computer is saying is going to be a lot better informed than the person who's only looking at what the computer is saying. I agree. It would be good to have you as a guest, Rock. We'll have to see how that works. Again, I'm not a techie. Okay, Mr. Virtue says it would be quite simple.
Well, maybe Mr. Virtue can write us an email in language that a 5-year-old can understand.
What's the acronym for something like I'm a 5-year-old or whatever?
ELI 5.
ELI 5. I understand, Rock. So, Mr. Virtue, is there an ELI 5 way of explaining it a little bit, just at least to give us an idea? You take care, Rock. Get some rest. 'Tis the season to punch holes in the ground. I hope the weather's fairly nice up there. It's been really, really mild over here. But you guys are 1,000 miles or more east. No, I mean it'd be nice to have Rock on. It would be nice to have the capability so that we could have basically anyone on fairly easily. I know it can be done because you have people like who are those guys? They're always there, JP Lawns and more and stuff like that. There's Google Go Live for YouTube. Okay. Yeah, I say I'm sure it can be done. Okay. Mr. Virtue says that you can now go to basically an AI helper to help you work through it in real time.
Yeah. AI is delusional and full of shit. They are untrustworthy.
Doesn't mean they can't make it work. I don't know. But yeah, I know that there's also StreamYard to your YouTube. We'll have to see. Right now, we're both so darn busy. I mean, goodness. I'm not working as hard as Rock Butcher is, but for some reason, it's taken it more out of me than it should. Of course, the guy I'm dealing with can be a little bit difficult at times. He's not a bad guy, but routinely, me and the other helper will show up at starting time. And it's like, okay, where's the boss? We know we need, is there something we know how to do right now? Yeah. Okay, let's get going on that and wait for him to show up. And that's actually the more usual start to the day. I think he may have shown up at start of shift once or twice. Well, that sounds pretty good, Asakura. Asakura said I could host it and have 5 other panel guests at once and save it to YouTube. So that would be StreamYard to YouTube. Okay, I'll see what I can come up with on that if I get some time. Right now, yeah, our internet's good, so that's not a problem. But right now I'm working 6 days a week, typically about 7 hours a day, and that leaves me like 4 hours to put in on Saturday mornings until I've made my 40. Um, the they're trying to keep the costs as reasonable as possible, and therefore they don't want to go into overtime unless there was a real significant reason for it, which up till now has not been a problem. I mean, it's not been an issue. But so that's why I've been pretty busy and kind of tired, and maybe a lot of it is I've just been uh, out of condition ever since the well, I didn't get as much exercise this summer because of the heart attack thingy, and then after the nosebleed thingy, then it went straight to Eva's treatment started for the kid. So I really haven't gotten a whole lot of exercise in over 6 months. So that might be part of it too. I don't know. But I'm not feeling bad. I'm just tired. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. I've also been drinking a 1 pint Gatorade for lunch every day too, to make sure I get electrolytes. Once I'm working, I tend to get kind of tunnel vision and not really think about water and stuff like that as long as I'm being productive. So, yeah. I don't think it's. I think I'm getting proper nutrition and hydration within reason. Yeah, I know, but hard rock mining isn't opened up this year. Now we got projects theoretically going to happen this year, but they're not guaranteed. Oh, this job I've been working at, I've been getting steady exercise. Like today, let's see, painting, 5 hours of painting, another half an hour of plastering, another half an hour of masking, you know. And so it's good steady work. It's not super hard. 1 pint. At least I think they're pints. They're not the full size quarts. You know? So, I mean, I can tell since I started doing this job about 2 weeks ago that my toolbox has gotten lighter. So, because I was trained never park in the way. Okay. So I'm parked on the far side of the driveway area, so my big truck isn't in the way. And I take out a toolbox that weighs 25, 30 pounds and a lunchbox that weighs about 5 pounds and carry it into the front door. Yeah, it hasn't been that hot up there. Today it started getting hot enough. And, but it's generally been nice and cool and pleasant, which can lead you to get dehydrated without realizing it. But some of the painting today was also a little bit more strenuous / challenging. the most we it had to. I was doing the cutting end. Tim's pretty good at rolling and such, but I'm much better at cutting ends. So I was cutting in the walls in a stairwell. So he had to lean a ladder against, between the steps and the far wall, and then get up there on the ladder and sit there and do the cutting in. And you have to be pretty careful. It's not tremendously difficult or tremendously strenuous, but it's very easy to not pay proper attention and wind up in a bad situation. In World War II, that's correct, Travis. Especially over here, line of sight, about 20 miles, El Dorado Bar. Yeah, they did a lot of sapphire mining there for the war effort, for jeweled bearings, for gyroscopes and stuff like that. I'm sure they loved the excuse also to get gold. During World War II, a lot of times they had what would in normal conditions would be a gold mine, and they just said, oh no, it's a sapphire mine, or oh no, it's a tungsten mine, it just has byproduct gold. I presume silver was also a strategic mineral. I know tungsten was, lead of course was, copper was, gold wasn't. But I don't, does anyone know if silver was considered a strategic mineral also? I don't know. But yeah, they definitely mine sapphires out here in a significant manner. Mercury. Yeah, though we don't have that much mercury out here. Yeah, exactly. That was pretty common, Brian. If you had any other product that was sufficient for war materials, yeah, that became your product, and the gold, which was worth 4 times as much, was just a simple byproduct. Yeah. Yeah, that was a common way of getting around that. Yeah, copper was a war material. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. See, a lot of places around here, you got either polymetallic copper mines or polymetallic lead, zinc, silver mines with silver as a significant value. We've got our little claim up here. That was a lead, zinc, silver mine. Lead, zinc, gold. There's probably some silver there too. But there was a significant amount of lead, and it was running 1 ounce to the ton gold. At least the recorded production was like 50 tons was all. But it's real close to a decent road. we can park the van within definitely within 500 feet line of sight to the portal. Well, what used to be the portal, now it's just a divot in the ground. And we need to go up there and do some metal detecting and stuff too. Yeah, silver's pretty important with all this electronics and stuff. Absolutely. But yeah, I've just been working 6 days a week, and Eva's been busy too. How many? Did you work like 7 days in a row or something, little one?
Yeah, 8.
8 days.
7 days in a row. Yeah.
Yeah, 7 days in a row. We've been just busy. Well, of course, as employees of the month, we should be. But yeah, it's been keeping us pretty busy. And this particular job I'm at, as a 6 days a week, doesn't leave a lot of other time for other stuff. I came home uh, Saturday, no, yeah, it was Sunday, I guess. I had to do all that work on Sunday that you saw the video yesterday on, and then get it all edited together that night and posted because that's the only time I had to do it. You know, any tricks to controlling temperature in the Gold Dragon? I'm not sure what you mean by controlling the temperature, but in terms of I can visually identify, and I should be able to use the infrared thermometer to do too, because when I've got the Gold Dragon wrapped with the KO wool, there's a gap in the front there. And I like it because it allows me to actually see the temperature. You know, for it to do its job, it's got to be glowing. So if it's not glowing at all, I know nothing. But it should be glowing at least halfway up on the outside. And then I can look in the exhaust port and visually observe the center bore ignition tube, which should allow me to take a temperature if I wanted to. But I can visually identify the color also, and then I can adjust the flame on the torch. Yeah, I could. That would make sense, Jeff, because I say chrome has got a lot of important uses. Say silver is not nearly as durable and such, so it would make sense. You could also use like a zinc or something like that to a galvanizing in some cases for an anti-corrosion coating. But I say I can see what's going on with the Gold Dragon, and once it's up to temperature, you can throttle that burner way down and still keep it at temperature. One thing that I would recommend is put heavier legs on it. Either that or attach the legs outside the what do you call it? KO wool, because they were getting hot enough last night to bend. They're 1 inch by 1/4 inch strap. So under normal circumstances, they're pretty strong, but not when they're glowing red hot. So there's two ways. Think it speeds up the leach. If we were leaching the material after the roasting, I'm sure it would, Brian. I'm sure it would. We're planning on trying to crush it after the roasting and see how it works compared to just regrinding the sulfites. It'll be interesting to see how that works, how well that works. But certainly there will be times when we'll be using it prior to leaching also. So it's a tool. Now, for the kind of grinding I'm looking at, a sag mill would probably be a little coarse. Ball mill, possibly a rod mill. Not sure what the advantages are. I need a small pulverizer. You know? Yeah, me too, Michael. That would be great for laboratory work. That's definitely better than a lot of other stuff for laboratory work. It's real easy to clean out. And you get a good fine grind in a very controllable manner. And then an easy clean out between batches. So it's nice. It's not a high production machine, and it has a lot of wear per ton in terms of dollars per ton of wear. But for a laboratory situation, it works great. I'm hoping the guys down there are doing real well now. They just got back down there to try and get things really rocking and rolling after a bit of a hiatus. They had some other business that was more urgent, and therefore they had to deal with that. And then they just got up there a week or so ago and started trying to bring everything into full production. So we shall see. Anyone got any questions or subjects or whatever they want to bring up? Especially any new people watching. If you got any questions, just ask them. Which is better? Definitely better than this. Thank you, Travis. It certainly ignites it well, but you really need to have a longer drop if at all possible. And so I'm looking at using the ladder on my camper as a support to put it up like 10, 12 feet in the air, and then drop it through like a 12-inch stovepipe so that I can see how well it roasts dropping through the air. Oh, I forgot to talk to Rock Butcher too. He had the idea of putting a baffle in there, and I was concerned that hitting the baffle might quench the burning of the sulfides. I didn't see much of that effect. And what might work, interestingly, would be to take an inclined plane and have air blowing up it so that it really retards the flow down the plane while getting good air impingement on the particles. That might work well to get you a lot of oxidation in a short distance. Well, that's what I was testing, and they seem to be working fine afterwards too. The problem with it inside the tube, there's not enough air inside the tube. Yeah, that air is instantly consumed by the time it comes out. As I say, everything's just kind of bursting into flame as it comes out because of the lack of oxygen. I don't need to retard it to get ignition. It's got plenty of time in the furnace for ignition. Then I need to have it going through air and still burning. Well, how do you have a superheated flame with lots and lots and lots of extra oxygen, honey bunny? Because that's the point. You need two things. You need heat. Okay, fine. You need lots of oxygen. Okay. So if you were to have, say, a blower blowing behind the flame and then drop it and it goes horizontally, that might work. Or you can maybe have the flame going vertically. If you had it at such a velocity that would actually carry the stuff up, that would give you good flame impingement. Okay, how do you do it without moving parts, honey bunny? Okay, That's part of the issue. I want no moving parts. Okay. None is what I want. That's the ideal. So far, I've got that. There's not a single moving part in that whole damn thing. And I say, even just a blower instantly adds complexity. Now, it may be worth it, but it adds complexity. Okay. And this is, you know, if you want to do something like that, you can have a flame blowing through a trommel tube. That's standard technology. Is you just have a flame heating a rotating kiln. And that's how they make cement. That's how they make a lot of stuff. That's how they turn limestone into quicklime and then slake it to get lime and stuff like that. That's how they do it. And it's complicated. You got blowers, you got rotating, you got feeders, you got all kinds of stuff. I say this thing here has 0 moving parts. Do you want to stand there and run a blower by hand? Again, no moving parts means I can load it, come back in an hour. Literally, theoretically, it should work just fine. The only thing you'd need to do would be put a screen on top of your input hopper, make sure it's well screened. Yeah, you can certainly do it, Michael. Absolutely. There's all kinds of ways this can be done. There's 1,000 ways you can make something hot and throw air in it. Okay. But there's not nearly as many that get it this hot with no moving parts and feed it with no moving parts, et cetera, et cetera. The gas pressure in the blower is set up properly. And if it is properly set up, it has neutral. There's no oxygen left. The stuff I'm running is gas rich. I can tell by the exhaust smoke. I can tell by the fact there's flame coming out of it. Okay, you have to have additional oxygen, a substantial amount. Okay, that's what I'm saying. We start adding complexity here. The next one is 8 feet above the ground. Same size. Okay. The device is, they just put it 8 feet in the air and have everything fall through a piece of stovepipe. Again, 0 moving parts. And, in the case of this situation here, they have a mobile mini. They have an ocean shipping container. Be very easy to access the top of that shipping container, have a stand so that the hopper is at a comfortable height, and light her up and let her go. The one negative to that is you're going to be creating a lot of noxious gas right next to your facilities. It might be a much better idea to build something out in the field. Okay, it's not that hard to have the equivalent of a ladder that goes up 10 feet in the air. This thing here can be held, held in place anyway, a zillion ways. Okay, and then you just have a 12-inch piece of stovepipe, and at the bottom, it's got an air space, and then the catch receptacle, like a trash can. Yeah, I don't care if you got arsenic or anything else. Just plain iron pyrite creates a huge amount of sulfur dioxide, which, trust me, is not fun to deal with. Every once in a while, I get a little swirl of air. And this is another reason why I breathe through my nose, because it hurts your nose before it gets to your lungs. An electric leaf blower, exactly, in the jungles of Nicaragua. Okay? Trust me, dude. Everybody thinks, oh, this go down. I can go down to Home Depot in 10 minutes and get thousands of things that take them months to get down there. You know, when they had their mill shut down for weeks because a pump broke, not a fancy pump, just a simple 4 horsepower centrifugal pump. Weeks it was down. Okay. Moving parts are a lot different when you live in a high-tech society like we do in the United States and when you live in the middle of a jungle. Big difference. But yeah, with arsenic or anything else, you really need to test your ore before you start roasting it, because it'd give you an idea just how serious of precautions you need to take. You know? Oh yeah, arsenopyrite is often very rich. Absolutely. But you'd have to be extremely careful because the exhaust gases would be quite toxic. And so for something like that, you may have to go through the trouble of actually getting a scrubber. You know, you may have to take that and scrub the exhaust gases. The other possibility is if you got a large area like the top of a shallow rounded hill that's easily accessible by road, build a stand there and to where it can work no matter which way the wind's blowing, and fire it up and leave. Come back in an hour when the charge is all gone through. You know? I would say yes, they do add heat to the system. Stay upwind, easier said than done in some circumstances. Last night I was having gentle swirly winds, which was kind of a pain in the ass. But if you can get 5-mile-an-hour winds in a predictable direction, should be zero problem at all to stay in fairly healthy air. Depending upon what's in that ore, you may still want to wear a toxic vapor respirator, though, just in case you get a little swirly that you didn't expect. Because you can have mercury, arsenic, antimony, what other stuff? I'm sure there's other things that are not as what do you call it? That don't get as much bad press, but are still nasty if you get too much of them. Lead, definitely. Oh yeah, scrubber would be moving parts for sure. I say there's all kinds of things you can do if you're going to moving parts. And that's why that tilted baffle thing with air blowing up it, that might work pretty well for that. You know, you just have an inclined plane with an upflowing draft of air, and you might be able to get good oxidation in a short distance. And in that case, if you then that goes to a scrubber, hey, that works pretty good. You know? I say there's all kinds of potential ways of doing it. My goal is extreme simplicity, something that can easily be built by some guy with a stick welder and an angle grinder in the middle of a third world country. And propane is usually pretty available. Sometimes you may have to go a little ways for it, but it's not too hard to get, you know. And so that's not too hard. But in terms of maintenance, minimal wear part, for example, if this is oxidizing iron from the ignition tube, not a problem. All it is 1-inch black iron pipe, piece of cake to replace. It would take me less than 5 minutes, assuming it was cool, you know, because just held in by the couplings at each end. No big deal. Piece of cake. And so that's what I've been trying to do with this one. I don't know. I got more experimentation to do. It's not a finished product in terms of the concept. The ignition tube works fine. The two foot tall Gold Dragon does fine for igniting it. Totally inadequate for oxidizing it, though. That requires a second stage of the operation. And I say, it may be fairly simple to do with just an inclined. I mean, it may be nothing more complicated than to get an air conditioning rectangular duct and lay it on the slope of a packed hillside. You know, you just pack this thing so it's a 45-degree slope, lay it there, and boom, you know, there you go. 8 feet long, no big deal. Again, it may very well be that you've got something that there's many cases you're going to want to be scrubbing. So the question is, how do you adapt that to a scrubber? Because there's many cases you're going to be losing gold to volatilization, and you're going to need that scrubber. You may need the scrubber for safety reasons. There's always heat, honey bunny, but there's not always solar power. There's none at night. There's none when it's cloudy, and it's cloudy a fair amount of times. But you're not going to run a 2-ton-per-hour mill off solar power anyhow. They have a generator. We have not line power, but we have power available. If we need it, we can tap into it. That's doable. You can also buy little generators fairly cheaply if you need it. They're not that expensive. But again, it's one thing that you probably want to buy two. If it's a critical piece of equipment, buy two. And then, you know, one dies, you just switch to the other one until you get a replacement. Hydroelectric wins in many situations. It's very efficient if you've got a flowing stream. Absolutely. It's not hard to do at all. I say, there's all kinds of possibilities, but right now I'm just working the basic physics. I was surprised at how well the ignition tube worked. That was surprising to me. It's also entirely possible that the key to this whole operation is simply to regrind it first, get it down to 200 mesh, and a 4-foot drop suddenly becomes adequate for complete combustion. We got testing to do, you know. Another thing that just occurred to me is that the sparks that are kind of hard to get rid of may be tramp iron. You know, that would explain it. So anyhow, anyone got any other questions or suggestions or anything here? Where we call it a week? Sorry, I'm not getting a whole lot of content out, but I've been busy. I really want, if the weather's been nice enough that we could, I'm sure, go up and go metal detecting now on our claims. I'm sure that would be no problem at all. But we need to get the time to do it. That'd be kind of fun, wouldn't it, little one? Go up metal detecting our claims?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. That's my thought, honey bunny. I presume that 1-inch iron pipe or equivalent is available any place that's got any kind of technology. And you just buy an extra 2-foot nipple. Not a problem. Okay. Well, how far are you from Helena, Montana, Michael? It'd be nice to have a fair test of this device. We could easily go out there and set it up, out of town somewhere and just run it for an hour. That's not too far away.
Where is he?
Oregon.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, if it's finely ground, which it should be if you're getting a gravity concentrate, from here it's 500 miles plus or minus. That's one way to put it. Not that far. Okay. Anyone got anything else? Any questions or anything? I didn't have time to eat dinner when I got home here. And the person who was talking about water, I've drunk this much during the live stream, which I think is adequate, but I'm still thirsty. Yeah, I say, if he wants to drive up here and try it out and see how well it works, we give it a shot. What the heck? Love to test stuff out. Anyhow, I think we will call it a night since don't have any new questions or anything. And if there's anybody new watching, I see we're up to 14 right now. So anybody new or whatever, feel free to ask questions. Okay. All righty. Well, let's go ahead and call it a night. Thank you all for showing up. We were down to about 8 at one time, honey bunny. So happy prospecting and keep it safe out there. And stream end.